Chapter 9, Part 4. Fedora opened December 12, 1882, and as a joint triumph for both author and star. Sarah's performance was superb, and her appearance in flowing garments rich in ornamentation breathtaking. A secret atmosphere emanated from her, an aroma, an attraction which was at once exotic and cerebral. She literally hypnotized her audience, Maurice Baring recalls. As Fedora she played with such tigerish passion and feline seduction which, whether it be good or bad art, nobody has been able to match since. While Jules Lemaitre went overboard with the eclectic, chimerical woman has again conquered Paris. Madame Sarah Bernhardt, by her characterization, her allure, and her kind of beauty, is eminently a Russian princess, unless she is a Byzantine empress or a Begum of Muscat, feline and impassioned, gentle and violent, innocent and perverse, neurotic, eccentric, enigmatic. Woman abyss. Woman I know not what. Madame Sarah Bernhardt always seems like a very strange person returning from far away. She gives me the feeling of the exotic, and I thank her for reminding me that the world is wide, and that it cannot be contained in the shadow of our steeple, and that man is a multiple being and capable of everything. After the final opening night curtain, there had been the usual ovation as Paris reclaimed its Sarah. The usual crowds streamed into her dressing room, the usual bouquets piled up clear down the corridors. Damala's show at the Ambigu had let out earlier, and he arrived backstage at the vaudeville in time to realize that his wife had chalked up another big triumph. Catching sight of his baleful face glowering at the back of the throng, Sarah abruptly stopped acknowledging the rapturous congratulations of her admirers and started babbling incoherent nonsense about why Pierre Berton was playing the lead, how everyone had wanted her husband for the part. Sardou had wept and implored him to take it, but Damala had made such a hit at Les Marais Enemies, his contract would not permit it. Damala was not in the least taken in, and the ensuing days at home were hell. The man's behavior toward his wife had been atrocious from the start. Taking advantage of every chance to humiliate her, he criticized her clothes, sneered at her affections, and openly ridiculed her before her friends. A few nights after the Fedora opening, they had a shrill and ugly quarrel, which went on into the early morning hours. Sarah, who was obliged to foot all her husband's bills, had been charged with a few costly purchases which she realized had been gifts for other women. Quite understandably, she protested, and she was a woman who didn't protest quietly. Damala raged back. He claimed that as the innocent victim of her snaring him into an unwanted marriage, he had a right to enjoy a few moments of liberation from this hideous slavery. He accused her of double-crossing him in regard to the role of Ipanov, of trying deliberately to ruin his career by forcing him to appear in a less successful play, called her every obscene and vituperative name, and stormed out of the house. Next morning, without notice to anyone, he departed for North Africa to enlist in a company of Algerian Spahis, and the Ambigu printed a hasty announcement that Monsieur X would replay Monsieur Jacques Damala in Les Marais Enemies. Rolling into 10 because that was short. So chapter 10, Attacks and Counterattacks. Damala's desertion was a cruel blow to Sarah, more to her pride than to her heart, for she could never have had any abiding love for the man. Also, she must have realized that through this marriage she had made herself a figure of ridicule to her public. Her current success in Fedora was no solace. Her spirit was broken, and for a time she lost her extraordinary zest for work. Les Marais in Amaze. Closed, and the ambigu was on the rocks due largely to Maurice Bernhardt's mismanagement. His mother had sunk a small fortune into this expensive folly solely to placate a worthless husband. 100,000 francs for the lease and an additional 100,000 to redecorate and get the shabby house in running order. Feeling obliged to put on another play which, with any luck, might recoup some of the losses, she signed with the poet-author Jean Rechepine to produce his new drama La Glue. The piece was first-rate, and the cast an excellent one, which included her friend Madame Agar and Gabrielle Regine, who was then just starting her rise to joyous fame. In spite of good notices, the show ran for only 50 performances and at a loss of 400,000 francs. Sarah gave up the ambigu. The 18-year-old Maurice gave up his career as managing director and, one assumes, returning to Lycée and the completion of his education. The money Fedora was bringing in was not enough to pay the star's creditors. In desperation, she was forced to sell her jewels, her carriages, and pair of beautiful chestnuts at auction in the Hotel Drouot. Drouot. The profits, though considerable, were still not enough, and she went to the drastic measure of closing Fedora, although it was still playing to full houses, and going off on a rapid tour of the European city whose theaters had greater capacities for bigger box office receipts. Before leaving, she commissioned Rechepine to write her a play. She also, possibly in rebound from the tortures of her marriage, took him on as her lover. Jean Rechepine was in every way the antithesis of Jacques de Molay. 5 years younger than Sarah, he was a magnificent specimen of healthy masculinity with broad shoulders, exuberant manner, and a warm, booming voice. Castelot speaks of him as a force of nature. The son of an army doctor stationed in Algeria, he served as a sharpshooter in the Franco-Prussian War,